Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Learned Hopefulness, The Power of Positivity to Overcome Depression, by Dan Tomasulo, Ph.D. Foreword by Scott Barry Kaufman, Ph.D. Narrated by Patrick Lawlor. Publisher's Note: this publication is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering psychological, financial, legal, or other professional services. If expert assistance or counseling is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Emily Dickinson. A new baby is like the beginning of all things, wonder, hope, a dream of possibilities. Ada LaShawn. Foreword. In the late 1950s, the psychologist Ellis Paul Torrance brought an experiment to two elementary schools in Minneapolis to find the secret sauce of creative fulfillment. Nestled between a very large number of tests, he asked children a seemingly innocuous question: "What are you in love with?" He then followed up with the children during the next 20 years to see which of his tests could predict adult creativity. Torrance was astonished that the extent to which children had a future image of themselves that they were in love with was a better predictor for creative fulfillment in adulthood than any of his tests for scholastic promise and school achievement. He wrote, "Life's most energizing and exciting moments occur in those split seconds when our struggling and searching are suddenly transformed into the dazzling aura of the profoundly new, an image of the future. One of the most powerful wellsprings of creative energy, outstanding accomplishment, and self-fulfillment seems to be falling in love with something, your dream, your image of the future." Positive images of the future carry us forward to our destiny, despite the inevitable twists and turns of life. We each have a destiny, a best possible future, yet we are constantly getting in our own way, losing sight of that future. In the process, we lose hope. The humanistic psychologist Abraham Maslow argued that there are two very different realms of human existence. In the deficiency realm, we are motivated by what we lack. We try to force the world to conform as if we are screaming, "Love me, accept me, respect me." Entering the being realm is like replacing a clouded lens with a clear lens. Suddenly we see the world and people for what they actually are, not as a means to our own end, but as an end in themselves. We admire the sacredness of each person and recognize that they are on their own journey of self-actualization. We also open to opportunities for growth. When we are no longer primarily motivated by deficiency, we can explore the full richness of life, the joy just as much as the forlorn, with curiosity and acceptance. Defenses down, we finally see the world's beauty clearly, as well as the beautiful possibilities in our lives. In recent years, psychologists have begun to chart the psychology behind imagination, hope, and possibility. What is becoming clear is that we don't need to be slaves to our past. We can navigate the future. There is a toolbox for hope, habits you can learn that will help you point a compass to your positive destiny. While much has been written about the toolbox of positive psychology, there has never existed a unifying theory of hope. Until now. Dan Tomasulo has put together a gem of a resource, a once-in-a-lifetime reading experience. You will learn how to make a profound shift in perspective and set yourself free from the shackles of your mind. I can think of no better guide. Tomasulo is one of the most thoughtful, compassionate humans I know, not to mention an extraordinarily sensitive and insightful clinical positive psychologist. This book is not Pollyanna-ish, but wise. Tomasulo doesn't tell you to ignore the reality of your suffering. He teaches you how to restore balance by increasing awareness and reframing what your future could be. This book will help you harness the gift of your imagination to get in touch more deeply than you probably have ever been before with your greatest strengths and highest possibilities in life. In the framing of Maslow, this book will help you transcend the deficiency realm, and in the words of Tomasulo, tune into the Hope channel. You may have gone your entire life up to this point with a grainy picture of your future. While a clearer picture won't magically sweep all negative possibilities out of your life, you will learn to put them in perspective. By refocusing on the positive potential that already lies within, you will restore a greater sense of hope than you ever thought was possible. Scott Barry Kaufman, November 28, 2019. Introduction. Hope is not a form of guarantee. It's a form of energy, and very frequently that energy is strongest in circumstances that are very dark. John Berger. When my marriage capsized after 30 years of being together, I had to learn to be hopeful. Since you've picked up this book, perhaps something has arrived in your life without warning. Like a boat hitting an unseen iceberg, your ship sank, and you're fighting for your life. When these things happen, we may feel uncertain about how to move forward in our lives. I am not typically a depressed person. I am usually upbeat, have good energy, and take setbacks in stride. So as my wife and I separated and divorced, I was thrown for a loop by my somber mood, low energy, and the loss of my enthusiasm. Work was the hardest part. There's nothing worse than a depressed psychologist. I continued my clinical work, but it was difficult to listen to people talking about their depression when I could barely manage my own. You think that's bad? Let me tell you what happened to me. Then I was introduced to positive psychology. My best friend was becoming a positive psychologist, and he encouraged me to try the techniques. For example, reviewing the previous day each morning through the lens of gratitude, or doing something kind for someone else. At first, this seemed like using a pea shooter to bring down a battleship. How could these small shifts manage the immense pain inside of me? But nothing else was helping. I needed help developing an appreciation for my life and my future again. Although it had never been a problem before, it now seemed impossible. Everything I'd worked for, hoped for, and believed in seemed ruined. My vision of the future had become to simply survive it. Having gratitude and being kind to others was not my idea of getting better. It seemed too simple, too easy, not powerful enough to lift my low mood. I was dealing with financial, social, and emotional whiplash. How could reviewing my miserable day through the lens of gratitude change that? My friend was persistent, though, and dragged me to the first International Positive Psychology Association conference, where I first learned of the profound and powerful research being done. If what they were proposing was even marginally true, psychology was on the brink of a new dawn. I learned that positive psychology is the study of strengths that empower people and communities to thrive, based on the belief that people want to live fulfilling and meaningful lives, and focused on how we can cultivate what is best within ourselves. The research is aimed at ways to feel more happy more often, by improving our experiences of love, work, and play. This mindset offered my first taste of genuine hope. In its simplest form, the research awakened me to the possibility that it was feasible to change how I felt, to actually transform my feelings. Even with all my training, clinical work, and supervision, this was the first time I believed that dreary feelings could actually be altered, not just tolerated. This led me to embrace the findings of positive psychology and the practices that taught me to hope again. From surviving to thriving. The field of clinical psychology has traditionally focused on identifying the problems causing emotional pain and mental illness, and then working to alleviate symptoms. Do our methods, talk therapy of various kinds, sometimes medication, work? Yes. Do they work well or in a way that lasts? In too many cases, no. The fact is, 80% of people who recover from depression relapse. If you are reading this book, you may be one of them. You may have found something that helped: therapy, medicine, diet changes, exercise, better sleep, more sunlight, but it may have worked only somewhat or for some time. The effort succeeded, but it wasn't sustained. Why? Because traditional psychology and medicine were designed to do only half the job. They get us out of the hole, but they don't really keep us out. The cycle continues. What about the 20% who recover and don't relapse? In a series of studies aimed at improving symptoms of depression, researchers found that simple methods focused on cultivating the best in themselves not only prevented participants from relapsing, they maintained sustainable levels of well-being for more than a year. Not only did they learn how to steer clear of depression, but they also often learned to thrive. They learned hopefulness. As we'll see, hopefulness, or hope as I'll also call it, is not so much a state of mind as it is a habit of mind, of heart. And habits can be changed. Hopefulness skills won't replace whatever treatments you've been using to control your depression. If you are taking medication, continue. If you have a physical routine that has been helpful, keep doing it. If you've developed healthy habits like exercise, good sleep, a nutritious diet, keep those up. They support your mental health as much as your physical health. If there are still changes you could make in these areas, what you learn in this book will help you lean into those changes. Habits of heart, mind, and body affect our mood either positively or negatively. In this book, I will be emphasizing learned hopefulness as a collection of heart and mind habits designed to improve well-being. By focusing on the science of positive psychology, which highlights emotional well-being, we can maximize the impact that healthy strategies have on our lives. And you'll receive new tools to add to what you are already doing in your life. Positive psychology practices will not only add to your toolbox to help you combat low moods, negative thoughts, and grief, but also shape and influence your positive attributes: savoring, mindfulness, faith, hope, well-being, and optimism are just some of what you'll learn to cultivate. When you learn tools that both alleviate suffering and allow you to thrive, you learn how to get out of a bad place, stay out, and live a happier life. The simple truth is this: not being depressed isn't the same as being happy. Whether you've struggled with milder or more severe forms of depression, you will learn ways to increase hope and be happier. The tools of traditional psychology focus on relieving distress. The tools of positive psychology promote well-being. The combination of the two leads to real and sustained change. These skills have the power to change how you experience the world. Your journey through this book. Not seeing the obstacles we put in our way, including our own decisions and thought cycles, is what keeps us stuck. Ruminating thoughts siphon our energy and block our positivity. The downward spiral of negative thinking is like a runaway train, leading us to perceive our situation as fixed and unchangeable. If you've ever felt too depleted to even try to get out of your depression, you are not alone. We are drawn to the familiar, and if what's familiar is negative thinking, we'll have difficulty taking in the positive. It's a cycle, and this book will teach you how to break the cycle and get it spinning in the opposite direction, starting today. Some of the tools you'll learn in this book will help you untangle from the past. Others will help you engage in the present, and more than a few will help you create your future. Some of the best practices can do all of this at once. The book is organized the way I've learned to teach these principles. The first chapter will give you a working knowledge of positive psychology principles and the research behind their effectiveness in short-circuiting depressive spirals. It will also introduce you to some exercises so you can begin to experience how effective these tools can be. Each of the next 7 chapters teaches a choice you can make to learn hopefulness and the tools to help develop these new habits. As they become habits, the tools get easier to access and use. Decision point, seeing possibilities. Tools for challenging beliefs about our limitations. Decision point, adjusting perception. Tools for transforming negative beliefs into hopeful ones. Decision point, shaping feelings. Tools for cultivating positive emotions. Decision point, exploring strengths. Tools for discovering your best character qualities to improve your life. Decision point, creating micro goals. Tools for setting goals calibrated to motivate you. Decision point, finding purpose. Tools for developing life priorities and determining what matters. Decision point, cherishing relationships. Tools for connecting to others and learning how to give and receive. Each of the 7 chapters will introduce the main ideas we'll be working through, talk about the research, and teach you skills, tools, and practices through exploration exercises. All of this will build your hopefulness, resilience, and well-being. I will also use case studies as examples. All names and details have been masked, according to the American Psychological Association's Guide for Using Case Studies. To keep track of your progress, I encourage you to keep a notebook, a journal that is either handwritten or digital. I'd like you to feel what happens when we do these explorations, so you can assess their effects. It will be most effective if you can do the exercises when you are prompted to. I know it's tempting to keep reading and do these tasks later, but doing them as we go will give you a real sense of what it's like to shift your perspective and alter the way your brain processes information. This will support the journey mapped out in this book and remind you of what has worked and how. Let's begin. Hope is waiting. Chapter 1. Positive Psychology as a Science of Hopefulness. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. George Bernard Shaw. I often traveled through Penn Station in New York City, and over the years I've seen many homeless people begging and talented musicians playing for spare change from commuters. On a particular afternoon, an exceptional violinist was playing an unfamiliar concerto that drew a significant crowd. As it did, one homeless man seized the opportunity and began begging the group for change. He would thrust his change-filled coffee cup in front of each person, shake it, and utter how he needed just a quarter. Most of us were annoyed by his intrusive behavior, myself included. Finally, someone simply shook his head no and pointed in the direction of the violinist. As if woken from a trance, the homeless man began to listen, swaying ever so slightly. He seemed magnetically drawn to the music, and his halting footsteps eventually brought him directly in front of the violinist. The homeless man bent over and poured the contents of his change-filled coffee cup into the open violin case. He then flashed a thumbs up to the violinist, who responded with a deep nod of appreciation. Nearly every person who witnessed the event, myself included, reached into their wallet to take out money for both men. To me, this transformational scene in Penn Station seemed to be an allegory. You can think of the homeless man as our negative and annoying thoughts distracting us from appreciating something good. But when invited to notice the beauty, benefit, and blessing of the beautiful music by giving everything he had to the musician, the homeless man received way more. His needs were unexpectedly met with abundance. This is exactly the process with our own perception. When we shift away from distracting negative thoughts towards something positive, we get everything we need, and then some. In my own depression, when I began using positive psychology tools, for the first time the sadness lifted and I felt hope. I felt more energized and positive, which gave me more motivation for change. Since I immersed myself in understanding how hope works, my life has flourished tremendously in ways I could not have fathomed. As you apply these principles, the same will happen for you. You are meant to do more than just survive. You are meant to thrive. My ultimate aim is to give you tools to use when times are tough, tools that will rekindle, magnify, and engage you in life again. There is tremendous value in learning how to work with the more bitter and difficult aspects of our life, as therein lies our potential for growth. For us to feel and function better, we need to perceive and experience our struggles differently through the lens of hope. That we can learn to do this is the promise of positive psychology. Hope is the result of believing that change is possible and having the tools to make it happen. Just as when building a home, shovels are used first to dig a foundation, then a hammer and nails are used to build the walls, different tools are needed during the process of building hope. Home builders and hope builders alike need a plan, a design to guide them. The blueprint for hope is inspired by the simple fact that we can influence our future. Psychology's shift from focusing on the past to creating the future. In the 1960s, Martin Seligman theorized that feeling helpless and giving up in one situation creates feelings of helplessness in other situations, causing symptoms of depression. Initially, he and Steve Meyer researched how animals failed to escape shock after it was induced by uncontrollable aversive events. The term learned helplessness came from these studies and was eventually extended to how the real or perceived inability to control the outcome of a circumstance based on past learning was the cause of passivity. In the 60s, the understanding and technology didn't allow for investigating the nuanced elements of how the brain functioned, so it was thought that depression was the result of learned helplessness. Seligman's research and theory have been the dominant view of depression in psychology. Until now. In their 50-year follow-up, the same researchers proved their initial theory wrong. Once they were able to use all the developments in brain science and biochemistry, they discovered that passivity in response to shock is not learned. It is the default, unlearned response to prolonged aversive events, which in turn inhibits escape. This deeper understanding has us looking forward to gain control, not backward to unlearn what has happened. These new discoveries explain how bad events cause us to be anxious and passive by default. When something bad and prolonged happens, we are evolutionarily programmed to shut down. We become passive because evolution has provided us with a switch that shuts us down to save our energy when the situation seems bad. What this means for hope is that our very ability to detect and expect control in the future will pull us out of a slump. Focusing on what can be done in the future rather than on what happened in the past creates hope. In the researcher's own words, we speculate that it is expectations of a better future that most matter in treatment. This has direct implications for where hope comes from. How well we envision what is yet to come will determine our motivation. Focusing on what's happened in the past keeps us sitting in the dark. When we concentrate on future possibilities, we can stand in the light. The pathway in the brain discovered by Meyer and Seligman that regulates this future forecasting is called, appropriately enough, the hope circuit. The role of hope in our lives. According to Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, hope is expecting that future bad events will be temporary, specific, and manageable. Other researchers like Charles Rick Snyder and Jennifer Chevins have suggested that hope involves having a pathway to achieve goals and the agency or motivation to reach these goals. Still other researchers like Barbara Fredrickson understand hope as an expectation because unlike other positive emotions, it comes into play only when our circumstances are difficult or at least uncertain. And medical researchers such as Kay Hirth have found that hope happens when there is sufficient support. No unifying theory on hope has emerged. The research findings are like the parable of the three blind men holding a different part of an elephant and then describing what the elephant looks like. Each description is accurate, yet not complete. So I decided to put together the puzzle pieces from different theories and findings concerning hope. The result is a set of tools that can make hope happen. High hope people have a high degree of agency, the energy and motivation to bring about a change. They also have a pathway, a way to get there, and are particularly good at generating new pathways when they are met with obstacles. They are both resilient and resourceful. This is what we will be working toward in this book. Hopefulness does not discount the negative. There are common misconceptions about hope that I want to address in this chapter. Here is the first. Myth number 1. Hope is purely positive. Fact. Hope is the only positive emotion that needs negativity or uncertainty. Hope requires negativity or uncertainty to flourish. It is the obstacles, the setbacks, and the disappointments that hold the emotional nutrients for growth. The history of psychology has taught us much about discouraging emotions. What makes positive psychology the most rapidly developing specialty in the field is the effect positive emotions can have on the negative. By applying specific tools to activate and enhance our positive emotions, we can shake loose the grip that negative emotions can have in our lives. Hopefulness is unique because it lives in the balance between positive and negative. As you will learn, it results from a series of decisions about how we interpret setbacks and act upon the world. Hope is a seed planted in the muck of our life that will do everything it can to find the light. Exploration. The thoughts that hold you back. One of the main features of depressed thinking is rumination. These familiar repetitive thoughts pull us into a downward spiral, robbing us of the energy to change. As we move toward the perspective shifts that lead to hope, I invite you to write down these repetitive thoughts. They hold you back, and identifying them is the first step in challenging them. You're not going to confront these thoughts just yet, but you'll want to get a sense of what you are up against. Think about the things you want or have wanted and what is preventing you from these goals. Where are you stuck? Please turn to your journal and take time to write about this now. Believe it or not, just writing down what is bothering you has been shown to have a therapeutic effect. As you develop the tools for turning these thoughts around,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?